Hello and welcome to episode 92 of the Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me as always is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello. So, first off, before we even go into doing Element Games, apologies for last episode. Neil and I, between us, have had some interesting times. Computer death.
Yes.
New computer not working properly for me. Work kicking rear ends, being away, family, you name it. It's been one of those times where we just couldn't get to record, and I didn't want to go and record another one just by myself because I
listened to that one. It was funny.
Was it funny? Was it?
Yeah. I enjoyed listening to you talk and sort of ramble on.
Sure. I think actually it came out all right because it was the second take, but it's harder to do. I don't think it's as good. So we will try and get back on track, and fingers crossed we will. So doing that, Element Games. We've got Age of Sigmar coming out for anyone who plays it. That's going to be huge. Age of Sigmar 2, loads of stuff coming. If you're vaguely interested in Age of Sigmar, now's a really good time to get interested in it. Go and check out Warhammer Community and then order all your stuff through Element Games. We've got all the new knights, which at some point might get 30k rules.
Necromunda dudes as well, the Cawdor guys coming out.
Cawdor guys, if you want some slightly religious fanatic militia dudes, that is not a bad option.
Necromunda are killing it for the all the cool militia stuff at the moment.
There's so much cool stuff, and weapons packs as well. So if you do want the odd weapon in your thing, you can go and get them there. And then we're going to keep saying it until it's released. We're not far off Adeptus Titanicus. So all these things you will be able to get in time through Element Games, and when you order in the pre-order week or 2 weeks for Age of Sigmar, you get an extra 5% off. And the best way to order it is to go and press the link on theimperialtruth.com or use in the show notes as well. And that helps the show out. And a big thank you for anyone who does that. And a big thank you if you mean to do it and forget as well. You know, it's still...
if the thought was there.
It's the thought is there. It happens all the time. I've done it myself before. But
do you know, I was actually thinking to myself just then, I'm thinking, when the Titanicus drops, I must make sure I get my order done. And then I went, don't forget the link.
Yeah,
it's easy to do.
It's very easy to do. I'll retweet the link as well. When I tweet a link or something like that, that is the link that supports the show. So if I do that, then you can do that for ease. Cool. So Neil, it's been a while. Has your mojo returned?
No. The mojo has been quite well and truly scuppered for quite a while.
Yeah, that's fair enough and understandable, and I'm in a not too dissimilar position, to be honest. We're doing a slow grow 40k paint along thing. So I did spray some of my custodies. I was like, perfect opportunity because it's 40k. I can use the custodies, get them done for 30k. So, I've got 5 custodies here as the first month's project. They're sprayed gold. That's as far as I got. But I will be.
Well, that's 90% done.
It's progress.
So
I made
it's
some.
Not too far.
Yeah, I made some Lord of the Rings figures of work that were sitting around that I'd bought, and making Age of Sigmar 2 stuff as well, ready for the all the pre-release kind of the order time.
I bought and one of my first AOS models the other day.
Yeah?
Yeah, I went, we talk about Hobby Mojo.
Yeah.
I picked up a model to try and paint it, and after 2 nights of trying, for only about 10 minutes of time, just couldn't paint. I felt as I'd forgotten how to paint, so I kept putting this model down. I went, right, okay, this isn't working. So the next day I went to just a local GW and just thought, do you know what, I'm just going to buy something. I was going to buy something and build it, and something that maybe I want to paint for a future Golden Demon.
Sure.
And I went out and bought one of the AOS guys, and I'm probably going to murder this name because I don't really know how. It's one of the Deep King, the Volturanos.
Volturanos.
The guy, Volturanos, the guy on the sort of the big weirdy sort of snaky sort of thing. So yeah, I'm really good with AOS.
On the eels, yeah.
Yeah. So he's like the sort of Put the box. Spoke to the guy in the store and just said, like, "Oh, just give me a quick overview of what these guys do," and he just gave me a quick, bit of background. And I bought it and built it just to try and
fire you up,
distract myself from the lack of mojo.
Yeah, you got to do it every now and then, haven't you?
Yeah, so I just bought the model, built it all, and it's sort of sitting at the side of the desk. Quite enjoyed it, great model, and just fancied building something different, really. So.
Cool.
That's probably the first AOS model I've actually purchased, as in actually bought for myself, I think.
Yeah, of course, you had your spread in White Dwarf recently.
Yes, had that. Yeah, but obviously that was
Yeah, so that just given. For those who didn't pick it up, that was the Golden Demon winners painting competition thing.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Yeah,
yes.
Some stunning entries in there. It was really cool to see, actually. Really liked yours. I think your concept was one of the best out of those.
I tried to see with my stuff. I always try and tell a story.
Yeah.
Which is looking through some of the other entries, there's a lot of I've painted a model and put it on a base sort of entries.
A bit of that, yeah.
Which is all well and dandy, and there's some great painters that can do that. But with mine, I always try to have something else that it's trying to convey. Sure. So I felt very much that mine had a bit of a backstory, although I do know the results and the winner is just a bit nuts and a bit out there. Yeah, cool. A bit special.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in there. I forgot to say it earlier on. So, again, when we said we got computer problems, Neil's still got computer problems. So, sound levels sometimes do go a little bit up and down. We'll try and hopefully, when you're listening to this, it's not too bad, particularly if you've got earphones on. Fingers crossed it should be all right, but apologies if it isn't. But we want to get some content out, so we cracked on. Okay,
yes,
so that's
indeedy.
Cool. So you'll get in there, and I'm sure a golden demon will loom up at some point to fire you up.
Yeah, well, the next one that's in the calendar is the Forge World,
sure,
the Specialist Games one.
And
going? I have a lot of info about Golden Demon. Since I've been off air, I found out lots of interesting stuff. I don't know whether or not you want to talk about it later or if you want to talk about it now.
I'll tell you what, let's talk about it now, because is this from Warhammer Fest?
This is from Warhammer Fest and onwards.
Okay.
So obviously I went and had dinner with Max and Aidan a few weeks ago. So the Golden Demon has changed quite considerably since Fest. The Fest, they've really rejigged things.
Sure.
And they've done a few key changes to how they judge. Remember there was this mention of commended entries?
Yeah.
That we spoke about before. They've changed how they do their stickering now and how they judge the cabinets.
Right.
So what they do, as most times, you put your entry in, they go around and put a green sticker on for finalist, as we've spoken about many times before.
Sure.
That's the first pass of the cabinets. Then, before they do the judging table, they pass through the green dotted ones in each category again, and then we'll give them another sticker.
Right.
That sticker is to basically sort of 50-50 or wheat from chaff from the finalists.
Right, okay.
So if you get that next sticker, they will be the ones that go to the judges' table.
Sure.
Once they go to the judges' table, they will then assess them, and then you will get a commended entry if you could, as in it was so close.
Yeah.
You were going to place, but they just couldn't quite make their mind up. But
sure.
You just lost out at the last minute, sort of thing. So to get a commended entry, you've got to be virtually winning, but not quite, sort of thing. That's how they're judging the commended entries from now. But one of the other big changes they made, which Max had great fun in telling me about, was previous years they used to then put the top three in the top shelf of each cabinet. You know that those people had won gold, silver, or bronze. And then they go to judge the sword, and they take all the golds out and judge the sword.
Right, yeah.
But Max had decided that he got fed up with people then using that as a way of working out which entries had got gold.
Sure.
So now he pulls them all out.
Fair enough.
So he pulls every entry. So there's no way of telling who's got gold. So they just try and keep a bit more suspense for people.
That's cool.
So that was one of his new things he's brought in. Darren has stepped down as head judge.
Right.
and now is not really mega involved with Golden Demon anymore. Max is taken on the sort of the head judge role. Max and Aiden are the team pushing Golden Demon forward.
Sure.
They're running it purely as the heavy metal team now run the Golden Demon, where they then also bring in, say, like a specialist painter as well as one of the judges, and maybe another guest judge. There could be a sculptor or someone like that. Someone like Joe was in the judges for Fest.
Sure.
So they're pulling together a judging team. It's been run by the studio. They are the ones that actually got the cards, the commended cards, all organised and sorted out. So that's quite cool. And then Tony Cottrell, now being head of events, is now in charge of all the Golden Demons.
Right.
So Tony is in charge of what Golden Demons are on throughout the year, and then also in charge of the categories, of what categories will be feature in each Golden Demon. So hence, we've got a Forge World, the Forge World sort of specialist game Golden Demon coming up in July, and there are a lot of categories for that demon, even to the stage where Max and Aiden sort of said there's a lot of categories, like too many categories. You've got Blood Bowl single, Blood Bowl team, Necromunda single, Necromunda gang. You've got Lord of the Rings single, Lord of the Rings unit. You've got 40k or 30k single, 40k, 30k unit, 30k, 40k vehicle. You've then got Unbound, and I think there's another one in there as well, which is a lot of demons for essentially a small demon, like a mini demon. I think there's 11 categories. That's a lot of categories.
Especially because you split up that specialist games. That it's the whole Forge World umbrella, isn't it? So
yes, exactly.
When how many? And this is not a degrading statement about Lord of the Rings, but how many Middle Earth fans are going to be there that then think about entering, because there is a weight bias towards the games you play, isn't there?
Yes, indeed.
On what you enter. So, realistically, how many people are going to be entering that Lord of the Rings? And I'm sure some will, and I'm sure they'll be good. But that crowd haven't been involved in going to GW events for a while because they haven't had the support for a while. That's slowly starting to change. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes. To be honest, if they try it and then decide they don't like it and change it, fair enough.
Yeah, and I could see them maybe toning down the number of categories. I mean, when I spoke with Max and Aiden, they said, really, your Blood Bowl team and Necromunda gang, and they could all be one category. You could have
Necromunda you can almost have sci-fi and fantasy.
Yes, definitely.
Definitely. Each individual hero, each individual unit, squad, gang, whatever you want to call it, and then go on from there. But it's something they'll have to play with, I think, to get right. What was interesting for me was you were talking about doing the second pass for the models for the green.
Yes.
Now that sounds very sensible, because essentially the quality of painting at an event must be judged against the other quality of painting at an event. So you do that first sweep. Okay, this is the standard we're going for, and then when you go through that second time, okay, so now we've got a good understanding of the quality here. We can refine that other step fairly quickly. Let's just do that.
It was very much the way they spoke about it was the finalist is almost like that's a really cool piece that can have a finalist, But then also, realistically, they know, looking at, say, if you've got 20 finalists, they know that there's only 5 of those that really could contend for a place.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a very easy look, these ones are not going to be able to cut it.
That was yours, yeah.
What's the point in clogging it up with bringing all those to the table? So I think they've done the right thing, because the judging is obviously a big problem in Fest because there's so much to get through.
Yeah.
So I think they've tried to refine the process a bit, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to help them do better judging and be more consistent with their judging as well. So it could be really good. I think it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, we've got the Age of Sigmar demon coming up, then followed very shortly by the Forge World demon, Then there's the European
Yeah.
Classic, and then we're into November for 40k demon. So there's still quite a lot this year. So a lot of demons that are out there. So I do think there's a good chance of people picking up demons if they really want to go for it.
Yeah, that's cool. That is cool. All right, we'll move on from that for a bit. Should we do what's been going on in... In fact, no, we'll leave that because we'll weigh that all in. So last episode was going to be the one that was not. Was going to chat about the London GT and the Heresy event that went on there. Now, I don't want to go too much into this, but I feel that we probably should address certain aspects of it. First off, we ended up with just over 80 players, I think, that actually turned up on the day, and bearing in mind everything that we're going to talk about, there were very few issues for me from the players' point of view. There were a few. There were some interesting discussions and things like that went on, but it was, a lot of the same old faces, a lot of new faces, which is also very cool to see. A lot of different approaches to playing the game and what they were bringing. There was a brilliant... I saw this list when I was going through marking, or not even marking, but getting them ready to put up online, was this World Eaters list, which was all infantry and dreadnoughts, and it was just amazing. It was so cool, and it just charged forwards, and the guy Sean had all his opponents were really complimentary about him, the way he played it. It was just
so completely
cool.
In character then.
Oh, it was just an awesome list. It's the kind of thing I'd want to run, like with Space Force as well. It was just like, that just looks cool. But yeah, and we had a wide mix of stuff. I think the breakdown of the units and everything else is still online to see. Lots of quad mortars,
Cool.
Quite a few more non-Spartan delivery systems as well. So things like Proteuses and Phoboses for the Loyalists. The traitors had none of those, but the Loyalists had a few of them. A few Primarchs died around, quite a few Alpha Legion players bringing their special characters, things like that, but they're all still on the imperialtruth.com. You can find the link for all those, that fun that I did, kind of tallying them all up. But it was interesting. I think it was worth doing. And we had issues through the weekend that hampered the way I wanted to run the event. It wasn't the event I wanted to run. Some of that is down to me, and moving forwards, we're looking at different ways of organising and setting up kind of the background stuff. Talking with Tom about, and indeed a guy called Paul potentially, about making apps for doing what we need them to do.
Okay, cool.
And all that jazz. And, that's something that I need to improve on. I'm aware of that. I'm not a very organised person, and I rely a little bit on having these other people around. So I have to make sure that they're either around or we have a system in place, or both. So we're going to do that. We ended up going old school and printing off tables and taping them up to a wall for people to find out where they were going. It meant we couldn't do much of the narrative, so I was trying to put up the narrative online a little bit on the Facebook page, so at least people could look there to find out exactly what was going on. And we used some funky scenarios that people haven't used before as well, which I think went down well. I'm potentially going to take that even further for Blood and Glory when we do that, and look at kind of what we can do with the scenarios for to keep the game fresh. At the end of the day, if you keep using 6 scenarios, no matter how many different armies you're playing, there's a certain level of you're getting tired of doing the same thing. And we've got a lot of scenarios to pick from, and indeed there are other game systems that do scenarios a little bit differently, which I think could be beneficial for Heresy. So
you're still choosing scenarios out of the books then? You haven't written anything new?
I haven't made up any of my own scenarios. What I have done is chosen scenarios from the Black Books. Some of the legendary missions we did play Hammerfall Strike, I think it is, which is one of the legendary missions where one side's attacking and they have to get as many units in their opponent's deployment zone as possible, which seemed to go down very well. I don't know if it's that balanced. I think it fully depends on what armies you're bringing. But then,
well, that's again where sometimes certain people's lists just don't work with a certain scenario.
No, absolutely, and there's fundamental issues with that in Heresy anyway. In my opinion, it doesn't really matter if the scenario does something. If your list turns up against something it can't handle, that rock paper scissors aspect is not necessarily great. And there are some armies and some lists that create greater imbalances in that than others. Things like Armoured Breakthrough, particularly. But on the other side of things, just the way you play some lists, like the White Scars or Jetbike list, can be similar as well. But, that's the nature of what we do. I also didn't have as much time as I would like to engineer matchups. So I wasn't always getting there was some occasions where I'm like, I really wouldn't have put you two together kind of thing. I'd have made sure you stayed apart. So, yeah, there's bits.
Because how were you doing that? Was that just done on a computer or was it some sort of system?
Yeah, it was done on a computer, but with me picking out some matchups, but they just didn't have time. So
with 80 players, it's quite
not.
Tricky,
it wasn't
it?
80
it's
players, so yeah, maybe. I think it is easy. I think we definitely could have done with extra staff, and that's just how it is. But essentially, what happened was, and people have seen it all online, they've commented on it and everything else. We had a venue that wasn't particularly suitable for what we were doing, in my opinion. Age of Sigmar players had a little bit of a better time with that. We had not enough security on the gate to get in. Every single bag had to be searched. This is London Stadium. It's a big target, potentially. If a terrorist thing happened there, they'd take kind of, a lot from hitting something that's symbolic as well. And then, so 2 security guards checking every single bag. This is people with, multiple KR packs that have to take out every layer of foam, things like that. We were an hour plus in and still waiting for people to come in through the door. That's not good. I took the decision to cut short rounds to speed people up and to cut short breaks to get 3 games in on the Saturday. Other systems chose to reduce the number of games they were playing or to play late, but I knew we had people who wouldn't be able to stay late, so I made that hard decision. I don't think there's a right decision. I think they're all...
It's always going to suit someone else differently, isn't it? I can see what you mean. Like staying late in London, there would probably be a lot of players that would have gone, no, I'm going home
I need
tonight
to be
on the train. I need to catch a train, etc.
People had to be places, one guy was doing a gig that night. He had to leave at a certain point, Those things happen. My issue is, I'd said you're playing 5 games of Heresy, so I'd rather you be pushed to play those 5 games of Heresy, but play them. But as I say, I think you're choosing one of 2 or 3 bad decisions there. That was my bad decision that I chose. What exasperated that was we ended up kicking out our lunch people at pretty much the same time as the 40k lunch people, and there was one place to order food. Now, I don't know whose issue that was, but there were, on the Friday, other places doing food, but they weren't open. We were all going through one point. That queue got up to 40 minutes wait for food, and at one point they'd stopped taking food orders. So we had people going elsewhere to get food. It's a 10, 12, 15-minute walk up to the village, the shopping place, to get food and come back. So that didn't help, particularly when I'd knocked 15 minutes off lunch break. We had, right from the start actually, it was setting up the tables, and we had 40 tables and 92 signed up players. And I understand how that happened. I believe there was a push to sell tickets, and somewhere along the line someone didn't check to think, hold on, we've only allocated space for 80 and we've allowed more ticket sales than that. Now, thankfully, not everybody turned up. I also found 3 tables and threw them in like the corridor section next to the bar that was right next to where we were, and indeed where Miles ended up from Little Legend Studios doing his painting classes, because it was a better place than where they'd put him. There were things going wrong. It wasn't ideal. If you look online, generally what people have said about the Heresy has been very kind and very positive. It has been said that our terrain was a lot better than the 40k terrain. I'm not going to get into that. That's whatever. I will say that the London GT themselves organised me using GW terrain, so that wasn't anything I did per se. That was all organised beforehand. I'm a firm believer in that. If you have issue with someone, you can talk about it and you can point out things you didn't like, but you've got to be honest when you're doing it and fair. People have started to receive prizes. I've heard from someone that they haven't received theirs yet, but he lives in a different country, so there could be issues with postage with that. But Toby put a photo on the group of the prizes he got from LGT, and there was a lot of stuff there eventually. I don't want to talk about it too much because it would only go one way, and what's happened has happened, and people will make their minds up next year about how they respond. And the main organizer Zach's been on Allies of Convenience podcast to talk about his point of view. As I say, fundamentally, the idea of playing in that venue was good. I thought we were going to be using a big kind of hall, seminar place, and we weren't. We were effectively playing in a restaurant. It was not good. The debates.
So what is it? The London Stadium? Obviously, I know it as the sort of
football ground.
West Ham's football ground.
We were basically playing in their club level, like dining area.
Right, gotcha.
And the event was split over 3 floors. There were other stuff going on. Basically, in my opinion, they haven't done the due diligence to check the venue was suitable for what they wanted. I think had you gone in there beforehand and seen the space that you had, you would see that it would be awkward at best. At very best, particularly the 40k rooms downstairs, it was pretty packed. And in my opinion, had I walked in and seen that, I wouldn't have booked the place, and I don't think they would go back there again. But that's by the by. I just want to kind of thank all the guys that came along and offered me support. I was a broken man by the end of it. The problem is, once you have issues, that affects your other issues. So things will always crop up at events that you have to deal with. We had to go and buy a printer because we thought we might be able to use the TVs that were there. We didn't. So out of my pocket, I sent Tom up, bought a printer so we could use it. But that was time that he wasn't there to solve some of the other issues we had,
Good old Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to Tom, thanks to Rob for coming in and helping out as well. Set up, and a big thanks to Dave Simpson for bringing 3 or 4 boxes of terrain. So I bought some from the club, Dave bought some from the Titans, and someone else bought some as well, and I cannot remember his name, but a big thank you to you as well. When I have an issue with a printer like that and I send Tom to do something, that's fine. We can get around that. But when I'm also then dealing with X problem and X problem and X problem, then the last thing I need to do is have my own problems kind of compounding it. So yeah, it's it is what it is. I suspect that next year, we won't be working together. So we're planning. There's other plans in the mix for next year. One thing
we'll wait to see what they are.
Absolutely. The one thing it has done is, I know Blood and Glory is coming up. You can go and buy your tickets. Put links in the show notes, all on the Twitter and the Facebook as well. I will make a Facebook event page as well. We've the organising crew for that were very aware of everything that was happening at London, and the possibility that the perception of London could affect other events is very real. So as a group, we kind of stepped up to make sure that we get everything right. So last year at Blood and Glory, the big issue was the food. Food and drink prices were, frankly, not good, and also were different from what Ben, the main organizer, had been told as well. He was stuffed that weekend. Well, Ben's actually put out the all the food and drink prices. He's advertised them. So
brilliant.
So
So is that still from the same people within the venue, or is that an outside catering he's bringing in?
I think it's the Roundhouse Catering team. I think they possibly last year saw an opportunity to put the prices up and earn a bit more money. They probably say they didn't. But whatever it's done, whether Ben's managed to do them a deal to convince them that they'll see more money go through their tills if their beers are £4 rather than whatever they were last year, £5, something like that. People don't mind when you're at an event like that. You know that you're not going to be buying a Coke for 50p, don't you? Yeah.
Yes.
You completely understand that. But when the prices go up to like £3 for a bottle of Coke, well, you just stop buying. So it's that balance between the two.
Well, then you end up starting. I remember listening to a different podcast and them saying that they go to like the bar and say, "Can I have a cup of ice?" Yeah. And they get a free cup of ice, and they let the ice melt, and then they just drink some nice cold ice water, and then they walk up and say, "Can I have another cup of ice?" And people find ways around it. Don't they?
Absolutely.
Think, well, I'm not paying that.
And that's the event can do what they want. Last year, potentially a bit disingenuous of them to kind of change their prices. That's I'm sure they'll say there's a different story to that. But either way, this year we've got that price fixed. We've got, I think the 40k event packs and Age of Sigmar event packs are about to go out. We've got tickets released. We've got a controlled number of tickets so that we know that we're not going to go beyond the expansion of the space we have. And terrain's being made right now, ready for the event. And is expected to be of a standard because we might not have all the access to the terrain we used last year because some of it was GWs. So there's a lot going on.
When GW go to an event, do they bring the terrain with them and then take it away with them?
Every event's different. So events have to ask for stuff and things like that. And GW have a team that deal with this, and the guy who leads it up is a really nice guy. I've met him at a number of events now, and we chat. There is definitely, they have different criteria and expectations, and people have to ask, and they are ever evolving, shall we say? I think that's probably the polite way of putting it. So, the problem is, as soon as GW go to an event in an official capacity, whether that's recording, giving terrain out, etc., they've put their name on that event, right? Whether they're running it or not. They are linked with that event. Mm-hmm. Now, Games Workshop can't afford to do that and then get shed loads of bad press. It's just not worth the hassle. So they have to be careful in the management of how they're going to do that going forwards, and that's completely understandable as far as I'm concerned. So, I'm not, I'm running Heresy at Blood and Glory as it stands at the moment. The guys who are liaising with GW are doing that, and they're talking to different departments. We've got Games Workshop are running Blood Bowl, I believe, and Shadespire at the weekend, so they're involved. And the other guys are running the other events and sorting out, and there's got lots of stuff still to be announced, including the Adeptus Titanicus. Hopefully we're going to get an Adeptus Titanicus event going on there as well. But yeah, lots of cool stuff. So events, cool. Wow, it's so much fun organising events.
I don't know why you keep doing it to yourself. It sounds like actually emotional torture.
So in the past, generally, I've enjoyed them, and they have their moments of stress, but that's fine. Cool, whatever. You can get past that. London broke me for various reasons. So, I'm reviewing what I'm doing in terms of events going forwards. I've talked to a number of other people who are reviewing how they're doing events going forwards as well, and also looking at where I want to do events, what I want to get from them, things like that as well. So, I could foresee going back to Cardiff because of Cardiff being Cardiff, basically, and being able to go out and do all that jazz that you don't get from. There aren't many places you can go and play 100-plus player event without needing to bring any terrain, any tables, and then walk 10 minutes into town for a night out.
I must admit that is a big plus. I popped to the Spartanax event on the weekend, but just for the Sunday, just to pop down, have a look at the models, say hi to everyone, and I love the Spartans, great bunch of guys, but their venue is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
and it's classed as Coulsdon, which is where I live, which is hence why I felt as though I had to turn up, and. It's like you're driving and going, okay, very country road. Oh, well, am I going the right way? And then suddenly, after think just about the third decision that you think, no, I'm going to turn around. I've gone too far.
Yeah.
Suddenly you see the sign for the rugby club, and then you pull in and they're there. So yeah, it's very having a venue where you've got boards, terrain, everything you need, and then can walk into a city centre where you've got all the bars and clubs and restaurants you don't get that in many places.
No, you don't. And sometimes you want to stay at the venue. Yeah, and so the difference for me between Element Games venue and Firestorm's venue, Firestorm's once gaming's over, go back to the hotel, then go out get some food, then go for a night out. Element Games, my perfect Element Games events are finish gaming, have some food, go back to the gaming hall, play something slightly different, stand around, chat with all your mates in a much more relaxed atmosphere. And both of those are equally valuable, but I haven't done the Cardiff one since I last ran a Cardiff event. So there's definitely part of me going, you know what, I really want to go back and have a good night out in Cardiff as well. So that's something I'm going to have to look into. We're going to have to look at dates. This year has been and is being manic, and that will go all the way round to January, potentially even March, because of Honeymoon and Adepticon, which we're both both thinking about, aren't we?
Yes.
I've got
diary soon.
So we've just kind of settled into the house pretty much. There's always stuff to do, but we've got the kittens settled into the house as well, even after we thought we lost them on day one. We got
Magnus.
Magnus, he does everything wrong. It's all his fault.
He went through the webway.
He did, little sod. We're getting married in 3 months, so we're generally on track with that. But that's something that is going to be foremost in my mind compared to some other things. And then I'm running Blood of Glory and whatever, so I've got to kind of allow this period of time. I've already spent a lot of time in the last 2 months away, and that's not fair on the other half either. So, it's all good. I've hardly picked up my paintbrush and my airbrush since I got back from learning how to use it, to the point where I'm like, I might have to watch some videos just to jog the old memory.
I had a chat with Caleb at Golden Demon.
All right, cool.
Mainly about you.
Oh dear Lord.
How was Greg? Yeah. Was he a good pupil? Yeah. I'm like, right, no. I know what Greg's like. Yeah. Well, yeah. Did he learn much? Yeah, he did. Was he just being difficult? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We won't say anything about that. That's a very Caleb answer. That's cool. But yeah. So, lots going on. Lots planned. Need to get painting. But it's good. This could be a lot worse, can it?
It could be. It could be a lot worse. And it's nice if you can get back in that swing of things and get painting, get gaming, get whatever on. It's a lot better doing hobby than having to deal with real life stuff.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, work's kicking up as well. But yeah, that is life. Okay, cool. Right, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll come back after the music. Well, joining me now, we have James from Heresy Trading. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thanks. Great to join you here.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on. We're just going to chat a little bit about the site, what it does, how it came about, all that jazz, because it always amazes me sometimes. Well, not everyone's on Facebook, for starters, but it amazes me sometimes how... if you can hear some noises in the background, I do apologise. Neighbours decided he wanted to mow his lawn at the same time as recording. It might come through. Heresy Trading, what is it?
So, Heresy Trading, to give you some context, it's been around since 2013.
Right.
And it is solely based on Facebook. And it's kind of grown hand in hand with the way that Facebook has started running its groups.
Sure.
But it's basically there to enable people to buy, sell, and swap heresy-related miniatures and bits without having to go through, trading groups that have everything. So you're having to troll to find stuff.
Sure. 2013. So we're talking right at the beginning.
Or yeah.
Even before.
I mean, it basically came about. Myself and my friend Fraser Hepburn, who also stays up in Scotland, we were chatting because we both kind of dived into the heresy when Betrayal was released back in 2000. I think it was tail end of 2012 that came out.
Something like that, around there.
So yeah, we were chatting away because obviously back then we didn't have a lot of kits from Forge World to choose from. So you were having to kind of buy kits and you would buy them just for weapons and that kind of thing. And there were a few Facebook trading groups about. There were a few forums that had trading sections. But Fraser just dropped me a message one afternoon and said, how do you fancy setting up a trading group so we can get hold of some heresy bits easier? And so we added a few people that we knew, and it's just kind of grown from there.
Yeah, you can say it's grown. Do you know how many you've got on there at the moment?
We're approaching 6,000, I think. 5 years to 6,000 people.
That's pretty healthy, isn't it?
Yes, and there's a members all across the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, that's just for heresy trading as well. So it's anything that can be used for heresy, or either way, whether you're selling or buying.
That's right. Yeah. So we will let people to keep it themed around the heresy. You can offer non-heresy items for trade, but you can't sell them. Sure. And that was a kind of a critical decision for us quite early on because we wanted to really keep the theme of it themed around 30k. We're big 30k nuts. So.
Excellent. When did you get into? Did you get in with Betrayal then? Was that it?
I did. Yeah. I actually had interest. I bought the 3 initial heresy novels that Black Library released when they came out.
Yeah.
Devoured those and started buying the novels. And then as soon as Betrayal landed, I think it was Angron and Betrayal were my birthday and Christmas presents from family.
Oh, cool.
For 2012. Dived in right at the beginning.
Excellent stuff. Just to clarify that, you have to be on Facebook. It's Facebook only. There are ways of being on Facebook without really being on Facebook. I think some people who, rightly or wrongly, they don't want to be on Facebook. I completely understand that. But you can have a profile that doesn't give anything away. I think that's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we are we have a process for vetting people who join, but we don't sort of exclude people just on the basis of, oh, that looks a bit dodgy. We actually look at people's profiles, and if somebody messaged and said, I want to join the group, but I'm not happy about releasing my personal information, then we would look at a way to get that sorted for them, because you're right, not everybody likes Facebook. but it's a platform that's easily accessible and easily admin from our perspective.
Absolutely. And I've got friends on there who've got a hobby account and a real account, as it were. You have to be sensible with how you do it, and as you say, otherwise you do come across looking like you're there for nefarious reasons. But if you are sensible, it's fairly easy to do, which is cool. So the principle of how it works is fairly simple. Yeah, I've got something to sell. I put up a post, would like to sell, and a description, photos of the item, location, and there are different trading groups, and yours is all done within the post, isn't it?
That's right. Quite early on, we didn't have that as one of our rules, and what we were finding was that things were selling, but nobody really knew what was going on. People got a bit miffed because they'd said, "Oh, I'll take that," but then suddenly it had already been sold. So it was decided very early on, just for openness, really. I mean, we envisaged the group to be for the more mature hobbyists. Right. So there's a certain degree of expectation of how people would behave. And keeping it in thread means that everybody can see what's going on. People can say that they'll take something. And it makes it easier for us as admins as well, because we can see if there's been disagreements and we can keep track of things. Not that we really have to, but it makes it easier as an admin.
Yeah, and absolutely, a group like this, fundamentally one or two people can give you a bad name as well. So you need to be aware fully of exactly what's going on. And also there's that very small percentage of people who aren't honest and upfront, and it gives you that backtrack to be able to give security to everyone else to know that it's been done the right way. There's a method you can see and follow.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've done it from a transparency perspective of everybody can see what's going on. Obviously, if it was a particularly sensitive issue, then we would speak to somebody through personal messages, and there are things that are best dealt with in that fashion. But for the most part, 99% of the time, it's all done through the group so that it's completely transparent. The only exception is obviously for PayPal and address details. You move that to personal messages because that's not the kind of information that you want to share with everybody.
No, absolutely. So I put some stuff up. I put a price on there, and I mean there's group rules. I think we should probably say there are pinned group rules. I haven't seen a trading site where everyone actually goes and reads all those rules properly. It tends to take a while for those to be assimilated in by people, but everything's clearly laid out. So I go on there. I say I want to sell a rhino. The first person messages me, says, I don't agree with your price per se. I want to offer you. Would you accept a little bit lower? That's all good. Next person comes on and says, no, I'll take that price. That's how it can work as you go down. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's nice and simple. I know the admins are good at keeping kind of things off, particularly with limited items where price is, variable when something's out of stock, things like that.
Yeah, we try to. The purpose of the group is to try and help other hobbyists out. We appreciate that some things become intrinsically worth more as they go out of production or if they're event-only figures. But because the ethos of the group is very much, helping your fellow hobbyists out, establishing or helping to maintain the community, we don't look favourably on people who are trying to make a profit. It's probably the best way I can put that.
Yeah, and I think most of the time it's clear when people are profiteering as opposed to asking a fair price for something that is in demand.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's certain things now, and obviously Forge World have kind of tapered off on their limited edition figures over the last couple of years, but things like the 2012 Imperial Enforcer, there seem to be that seems to have settled at a price of about sort of £20 to £25. Things like the Titan Princeps that they did as a limited release a couple of years back everything seems to have kind of settled into prices now, and obviously eBay is an extreme example of prices, but it's fairly easy to do a little bit of research and see what your item's worth at a reasonable value.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that is harder to kind of judge is painted pieces.
Yes, obviously painting is completely subjective.
Sure.
And I mean, what you yourself like and what I myself like are going to be completely different, chances are. From a personal perspective, I think that some airbrushing effects can be completely overwhelming on miniatures. So I might look at an airbrushed miniature that's got a lot of object source lighting on it and think, well, I'm not really wanting to offer that. But as long as everybody behaves in a kind of adult fashion of, well, you know, somebody's asked a price, that's the price that they're asking for. If you don't like it, just move on.
Yeah,
if you do like it and you want to buy it, you know, go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think it's easy to forget, but there's hours gone into models, and my hours might not be the same as your hours in terms of getting to a finished piece.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement as well. And I mean, we don't allow business posts, and we don't allow commission artists to advertise. Again, because the ethos of the group is about helping the community out. You're absolutely right. Somebody's standard of what is display level is going to be completely different to somebody else's. We've had a few instances where there have been arguments about the value of something.
Right.
But again, we just try to explain to people that it's completely subjective. If you don't like that price, you're not obliged to pay it. You know, somebody else might. If it doesn't sell, then the person who's put that item up has got their answer. It's not going to sell.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And I think as well, there should be an emphasis on the buyer. To, you know, I've done it before where I've purchased models that I'm going to repaint. Where, you know, just because the paint job that person's put on isn't relevant to me doesn't mean it isn't relevant to their price. So you've got to bear that in mind when you're looking at these things as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's a really good site. We know that Forge World tends to hold value quite well comparatively.
I think so. I actually shudder to think at the amount of stuff I have purchased and then sold on to fund projects. But yeah, I think with few exceptions, you're looking at mostly getting your money back. And I mean, again, generally, if you're using the group, you're not looking to profit. So, and you're probably shifting stuff on to make room for something else, or because you've tried a unit out, you don't really like it. So you're not really kind of losing out, I don't think.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I recently purchased a Mastodon off the site, which was about the price that it's bought for, and I am going to repaint it, which is criminal, really, because it's really well painted. But you know, that person's happy with that price. Again, as you said, they want to save some space, save some money, move on to the next project. Mm-hmm. If you look on the site, you will find things like that. As I'm a hobbyist who's frankly fed up with putting big models together. Some people love it, I don't. And I find actually sitting on there, just keeping an eye out for certain items, and if they pop up already made, then I'm like, excellent. And I know actually I'll pay that extra little 5% or whatever, because actually if it's well made, maybe even more, it's worth it for me.
I think you're not alone in that perspective. I'm a bit of a fussy hobbyist. I like building stuff myself.
Right.
So I don't tend to buy a lot of things that are pre-built, whether that's through Heresy Trading or other trading groups. But I completely understand where you're coming from. And having built one of the original Spartans, where you had to cut that track link out, but you weren't told that you had to cut that track link out before you actually bought the kit.
Sure. I
can completely appreciate I'd rather buy a well-built model and not have to faff about. The same with I don't know if you've ever built the original Legion the original autocannons, not the Legion autocannons, where you had to bend the ammo feeds.
Oh, yeah.
I had a squad of 10 of them, and I must have spent about 3 hours with multiple bowls of boiling water because I didn't know about the hairdryer trick at that point. bending those ammo feeds and absolutely hating every minute of it.
Absolutely. Well, I play Mechanicum, and there's a few ammo feeds there that I got. The hairdryer that is only used for modelling, although the other half has borrowed it a couple. She still laughs at the fact I own a hairdryer, to be honest, when I have very little hair on the top of my head. But it's all good fun. Yeah, and I think it is really good. There are other sites. I think we should be honest. There are other sites out there who do good things as well. They do different things. Obviously, this is Heresy. Others will allow other stuff, and they'll have slightly different practices as well. So you have to be aware of that. But when you're looking out for something specifically, A, you never know what pops up. But B, I'm always amazed when someone asks for the most random single piece, and then 3 people say, "Oh yeah, I've got one of them sat in my bits box." It's amazing what's out there.
And that's what the original idea of the group was that you were building a squad, or you were building a character, and there was a particular bit that you were after, but you didn't really have the cash to spare for a £20 model kit. Yeah. So you'd go and you'd say, "Oh, has anybody got the sword from the Cataphractii Armor Praetor?" And somebody goes, "Yeah, because I put a lightning claw on mine. Here you go." So yeah, it's fantastic to see that still happens, and obviously as we've expanded in membership, more people, more bits boxes, so it kind of helps out.
Yeah, absolutely, and as you say, members all around the world. If you need a head of a Primarch, I don't know how many times I've seen heads from Primarchs being sold, and my mind's blown. All these people sitting around with a Primarch without that head on. I suppose we've got third-party helmets and things like that as well that are all part of that system. But it just until you need something like that, you don't tend to think about it.
No, and it's amazing as well how obscure, as you said, the bits might be, and how somebody somewhere has probably got it. And it's funny sometimes watching. Some things take a little bit longer for somebody to post saying I've got that, and sometimes it's within seconds. And you're like, how do you even know that you've got all these bits?
Yeah, it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. I didn't mention third-party parts there. What are the policies on the site?
So for third-party stuff, as I said, it's Heresy era and Crusade era themed stuff.
Sure.
And there are some companies out there who make fantastic third-party bits. I think Anvil Industries were doing some bits and pieces for a while. We don't frown on third-party bits. We don't frown on third-party models, as long as the stuff is appropriate to the era. So I'm trying to think of an example here. If you were trying to look for pieces for a navigator, for example, there would be other ranges that you could look at from other companies that might yield bits. We don't tend to get a lot of third-party sales anymore, but for a while, Anvil were making some interesting bits that people were using. So yeah, generally the main guide is that it's got to be relevant to the era. And I mean, we've had things like I regrettably sold my Battlefleet Gothic collection through the group because that's relevant to the era. We've had bits and pieces from the Necromunda range that you could fit in as being relevant to the era. So yeah, it's mainly that is the guiding principle.
Sure.
The only thing that we obviously are completely against is anything that's counterfeit, and that's regardless of where that's from.
Absolutely, and this show has the same principle on that. It's not something we get in too much. I can understand the appeal for people, but it's not in the best interests of our hobby, as well as the fact that there are legal issues.
Absolutely, I think that the perspective I've tried to adopt over the years is that, from my personal point of view, it's not something that is healthy for anybody, but it's a personal choice. Each hobbyist makes their own choice as to where they're going to buy their miniatures from, but it's not something that we want or welcome in the trading group.
No, absolutely. So, say I've done the deal. We've agreed. We've gone to private message. We've talked. most people tend to use PayPal now. PayPal's pretty much solidified itself, hasn't it, as a system? But
it has, and one of the things that's actually been quite interesting with how PayPal has evolved is obviously the terms and conditions of use of PayPal have evolved as they've solidified themselves as kind of the one-stop shop for payment. And our group rules have evolved in line with that. I think very, very early on, and I'm talking sort of 2013 when the group had just started, there was almost kind of like a gentleman's agreement type system where you paid friends and family and nobody had lost any money for fees.
Sure.
And some rather unsavory people quickly realized, without friends and family, there's no protection for the buyer. I can just not send the items and get the models and the money. Unfortunately, like so many things, you kind of find out these things as they happen. So, as we discovered that this is what some people were doing, we really sort of put the onus on saying, as a buyer, for your protection, you need to use the goods and services option on PayPal. We can't physically make you do it, but if you don't use it, then you've got very little recourse if something goes wrong. And that could be that the buyer doesn't send the item, or that the item's damaged while it's in transit. Goods and services protects both parties.
Absolutely, and that's something you should be doing anyway. If you don't know who you're sending money to, period, whatever the situation, you probably should be a bit careful.
The principle I tend to adopt is if you personally know the person, we've got a lot of communities of 30k players across the country, so obviously people know each other in real life. And I was fortunate enough to go to the Weekender back in February and met a few hobbyists that I've only ever chatted to online. So if you know somebody well enough that they're in your circle of friends, then you could probably look at sending via friends and family, because that's what that function is for. But if you're buying from strangers online, then absolutely protect yourself in as many ways as possible.
I think it's easy to forget. We think we're a close-knit group of hobbyists, and generally we are. However, there will be a small percentage of people in any social circle. And I think as gamers, sometimes we leave our mobile phones down, things like that, in gaming halls. And sometimes I think, what am I doing? You never know. We're very trusting of each other, but and the other thing is as well, and as you say, it's not just have they sent me the stuff. It's have the postal service lost it? Has it been damaged? And without that buffer, it can be awkward. As soon as questions get asked in that respect, all of a sudden you've got an issue, whereas otherwise you don't.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've lost track of the amount of items I've bought and sold personally. I've had 2 negative experiences of selling items online that cost me money, and that was where I hadn't taken the precaution of using tracked shipping.
Sure.
And I think the other one I've had was where I had used tracked shipping, but the item was delayed through customs. It was going to Australia. And the buyer initiated a PayPal claim saying it hadn't arrived, and because of the timescales involved, it was a bit ropey for a while, and that was eventually resolved. But for the most part, if you've taken the steps to protect yourself, if it's a high value item, you're using a tracked method of shipping. You package everything as securely as you can. Not putting bits in envelopes with a tiny bit of bubble wrap, because it's amazing how mashed up things will arrive if you don't take precautions.
Yeah.
I think I've had a couple of things that come from people where they thought, I'll pop it in an envelope and I'll save some money on the postage. And then the envelope arrives with a small hole in the corner, and the couple of bolters are somewhere in Royal Mail's sorting system.
Absolutely. And that's something, again, to remember when you're putting up your sales post. You can put a price, you can exclude shipping. I mean, it's like you can stipulate up front what you want, that's sensible, and you agree at that point what you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, it's quite regular that we'll see somebody say, will you ship that to this country? And some people don't want to ship outside the UK, and that's their choice. We don't have a policy on that.
There are certainly some countries I'd be a little bit I've had issues with Italy before. A number of people have.
And as I said, I've had a couple of experiences where I've had items go missing, and so yeah, I can't stress enough above a certain value. And I think with Royal Mail, so second class gets you about £20 compensation.
Yeah.
So if you're selling something, say you're selling a Primark, you pop it in the post with just second class, and it might get there okay, and the risk might pay off. But if it disappears, you're only going to get £20 compensation for that, and the Primark's worth 50. So you're going to pay that compensation out of your own pocket. You're not going to be able to claim that back. So it might seem like that extra few quid for the track postage is a bit of a pain, but you're just protecting yourself and you're protecting your buyer to make sure that it gets there okay, and you know that your £50 model kit has arrived. And if anything untoward does happen, you can claim it back from Royal Mail rather than having to pay it out of your own pocket. I've done that once, and I can tell you it still stings now.
Yeah, I've had the odd issue like that as well. And then conversely, I mean, I was with a friend the other day. He's moving house, and he sold a load of Australians on another site, and going through a third party, I think it was, shipped to Canada for not a lot of money, all tracked. So again, you're not stuck with that one. Good to remember that there are websites now. You can compare parcel prices, things like that. There's lots of options out there.
Definitely, and it's always worth. I've got a set of scales in my kitchen. I'm not much of a cook, but I keep a set of scales in the kitchen purely to be able to get an idea of what something weighs when I'm packing it up, because there's nothing worse. I think probably every trader's made a mistake once or twice where you've estimated it's probably going to be about this much to ship. You take it down to the sorting office, you pop it in the post, and it costs you a little bit more than you expected because you weren't, you've misunderestimated. Misunderestimated, that's not a word. You've got the weight wrong, or you've got the sizing slightly wrong. I mean, Royal Mail are quite good with their dimensions and stuff now. They after they changed recently. But you're absolutely right. There are other options for sending, and it's completely up to the seller how they go about that.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you think we should talk about before we head off?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I'd like to say is that obviously, for a group that started from two guys who dived into the Heresy back in 2013 to go from adding the few people that we knew to having 6,000 members, and for having the recent development I'm sure you've seen of Servitor 313C. There's some exciting stuff coming from that in the future. We're now looking at incorporating Adeptus Titanicus when that's released, because obviously that's a solid Heresy-based game system.
That's dangerous.
So yeah, to have come from the humble beginnings of a couple of guys in the Highlands of Scotland chatting about setting up a trading group to where we are now, it's been a fantastic journey, and we're really grateful for the members for getting what we're about and for helping to make us what we are.
Cool. Well, from this side of things, from someone who's used the site, I want to thank you guys for setting it up, and all the admins that work tirelessly. We all make mistakes every now and then when we're posting. It's nice to have a friendly reminder that you've got the rules wrong. It needs to be done.
Keep it humorous. I think for a while, about a year ago, I was posting something along the lines of, it looked like a Mechanicum data feed, and it was sort of cyclonic torpedoes armed, exterminators protocols initiated, and then I'd put, what the person had posted incorrectly or something. I mean, there's some things that we feel are so intrinsic to the group rules that, if you've posted it in breach of them, it just comes down. But where possible, we like to try and give somebody a nudge and say, look, we'll give you a little bit of an opportunity to fix that, because it as you say, everybody makes mistakes. It's really easy if you're posting something in a hurry, or you think that you've posted something and your phone hasn't uploaded it, and Facebook itself glitches on an almost daily basis. So we tried to keep it light-hearted.
Yeah, and it's good. At the end of the day, I think posters must remember that this is not a paid gig you're doing. This is not, you're not earning millions off it, I assume, from Facebook.
No, unfortunately we're not. I would love it if my heresy addiction could be funded by other people buying and selling stuff, but No, we've got a fantastic admin team. We expanded last year because the size of membership we'd got to, it was becoming just a little bit unwieldy for myself and Fraser to do everything because, as you said, we've got real lives and that kind of thing to deal with. So yeah, we expanded the admin team. We've got some fantastic folks who not only are on the ball, and I think we've generally got a 24-hour presence on the group, so somebody will catch something if something's up.
Sure.
But also, we've got folks who are actually into the hobby, who use the site, who are quite active in other aspects of the hobby. So yeah, it's just helped add to, well, in my opinion, it's helped add to the community that we've created with the group.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good resource. There's notifications popping up on my phone all the time, and you keep an eye out because you never know when that little golden nugget of whatever you need will pop up. The thing you need that you never knew you needed.
Yeah. And it's always great when that happens because I don't know about yourself, and I'm sure your listeners are probably the same as me. I'm a bit of a hobby butterfly.
Oh yeah.
And I've always got about 15 different ideas going on, and you're sort of thinking, well, I could order that. And, oh, it's popped up on the group. Well, I can just buy that just now, and that'll go there. And so no, I still have the notifications turned on, even after running the group for 5 years, because random things pop up every so often, and as you said, you didn't know you needed it until you see it.
That's it. Excellent stuff. Okay, I think we'll probably call that there then.
Okay, fantastic.
That's wonderful. Thanks for coming on, and keep up the good work.
Thanks very much for having me.
Cheers. And joining me now, we have Michael. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming back on. So, we're going to be chatting about Mechanicum, an oldie but a goodie, with Adeptus Titanicus coming out and new knights and everything else. It seemed not a bad place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to book 9, but yeah, it definitely felt like a timely reread.
Yeah, I read it a little while ago for After Eleanor. And it was interesting going through it with Dave is sure. So we're back to one of Graham's one of the books people call out a lot, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the best.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that I hadn't read since I read it fairly shortly after it came out. So I don't know when that was, 2008, 2009, something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
Certainly, it had been a while. Maybe it was a bit later than that. So I was really looking forward to getting back into it, and I can see why it's one that people like. I think there's a bunch of different elements in there that sort of cause that reaction, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I think it's also notable for it was something fresh and new.
Yeah, big time.
These days, like you said, Adeptus Titanicus game's about to come back out, or the new version at least. The Knights are really big. We've had the Adeptus Mechanicus factions in 40k with the miniatures, but back when this was released, such things didn't exist.
No.
I mean, I'm not sure there'd been a reference to like a depiction of Imperial Knights ever in a Black Library book, because I know they'd been in the old was it Titan Legions?
Yeah, Epic and all that had them.
Yeah,
but
I just don't think they'd ever, because that was so long ago, and there was never a 40k model or anything like that. There were never any books written sort of about Epic. So I think everyone sort of read this and went, "Whoa, Knights, weren't they great?" Or if you weren't around at the time, you're like, "Cool, what are these things?" And the same thing just with Exploring Mars, seeing some of the Mechanicum stuff.
Yeah,
it just felt fresh, and that was great because that's sort of, it was still in that peak Heresy period, wasn't it? Where everything we're all still going, "Oh, isn't this amazing?" Like no one expected any of this stuff, and so obviously it was a chance to explore a faction, a part of the universe that really hadn't seen much love before.
Yeah, absolutely. We knew from collective visions, all that kind of thing. We knew that Mars had this civil war. That was always part of the background, but it was very glossed over. Beyond knowing Kelbor Hal, a couple of names and a small bits and pieces that they'd done to help the War Master. It was, as you say, one of those shrouded pieces and a real gem for the fan to get a look into the faction, and possibly and probably contributed to a lot of the stuff we're getting now in the game as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a cracking book, and even now there's we read this book and there's still so much depth that can be plumbed on Mars, and we're probably going to be heading back there soon, pre-siege. So you would have thought so, and with Forge World talking about understanding what they're going to be doing with a Mars book, big black book for Heresy game as well. So
yeah,
all exciting stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, shall we have a quick talk about the loose plot, the sort of concept of it, before we dig into it in a bit more detail? Yeah, this is a talk. As I say, normally when we get you on, we don't spoil too much stuff. This is going to be a slightly different view on that. Mechanicum's, as you say, it's a number of years old now, so we're going to go into that a little bit more. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess the gist of it, really, then, in its simplest form, is it's set essentially just before and the very beginning of that civil war that we just talked about. Yeah. So it's about the beginning of that, how that looks, that concept. I think Graham talks about it in the afterword. That concept of the death of innocence, the point at which the Mechanicum was still reasonably forward thinking, and this sort of marks the point at which that backsliding into ritual and dogma begins. Yeah. So the grand sweep of it is that it's set on Mars, which is riven by, or increasingly riven by, factionalism. But this is the point at which that factionalism sort of turns sour. Is that fair? Is that sort of the big picture of it? Yeah, absolutely. And then around that we get inklings and looks into some of the aspects of Mars that have been whispered about, the cult of the dragon, and around the main characters, maybe some of the technology. What we do get actually, and it's dealt with further down the line as well. We get to see that this is pretty much the reason that we don't have any nice things in 40k. Yeah, exactly. It's this book. Yeah, I think that's right. So the sort of the more detail of the story, obviously, is that there's this character, this young woman called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Dahlia Cythera, something along those lines. Cythera. I think she's essentially, she sort of transcribes endless reams of text in some office back on Terra, but she got in a bit of trouble for adapting her augmetics, and was rescued from oblivion by one of the senior tech priests on Mars, senior adepts, called Adept Coriel Zeth. Is that right? I think sounds right. I think that was her name. Yeah. Coriel Zeth, who saw that Dahlia, she had something that not very many people have, which is this ability to retain information, but also to intuitively understand how machines work and to be able to fit things together, come up with brand new concepts without having to rely upon strictures of written technology. So she's brought over to Mars to join Adept Zeth in this grand project, the idea being that it will allow them to sort of utilize the warp and tap into the source of all knowledge. So Zeth is quite forward-thinking. She's developed cool stuff. So she's developed this idea of the noosphere, which sort of has come back into 40k recent years, this concept of the noosphere. But was sort of brand new at the time, and no one had really seen it before. It's this idea of
Super
it's like
Wi-Fi.
40K's version of the cloud, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like data sort of living outside of its constraints. So so she's brought over and becomes part of this project and gets set on a path which leads her to, like you said, this whole idea of sort of the dragon of Mars, ties in with a short story that Graham wrote called The Caban Machine, which is about an artificial intelligence. And at the same time as that's happening, and Dahlia sort of goes on a quest, the Titan legions are then the sort of the visual metaphor for the civil war on Mars actually kicking off. So these factionalisms, these rifts between different parts of Mars actually coming to blows as Regulus, Regulus, who's the Mechanicum envoy to Horus, returns to Mars and basically propositions Kelbor Hal, saying, join the War Master and you can have access to all the stuff the Emperor told you not to use. But it's that or nothing.
Yeah.
And that then, access to the vaults of Moravec.
Yeah, he didn't need
all
the
the
threat.
forbidden technology.
He didn't need the threat. The carrot of opening up that technology and being allowed to purview that where it was forbidden was all he needed.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the classic thing for the Mechanicum, isn't it? That thirst for knowledge, which means that anything that you're told not to use is going to be even more tempting than before. So he was given the carrot, like you said. Stick was not needed. The Vault of Moravec sort of becomes the catalyst for the first steps towards Dark Mechanicum and the melding of the warp with machinery. It kicks off this massive schism where, in the book, you don't see too much of the ground level stuff, with the exception of Legio Mortis taking it out on Legio Tempestus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I've got those Legios right.
Definitely Mortis. Pretty sure it was Tempestus. It was something like that. But absolutely. They're your big smashy, unsubtle hints about what's going on whilst Dahlia's story kind of weaves its way through everything going on there. And then also this third part is watching Mars fall apart. I like they call it the death of innocence, which is a great term, really. And really, as you say, this is a defining feature that maybe we didn't appreciate before this book was really understood, like how important Mars would have been moving forwards.
No, definitely. You're right. The death of innocence is a beautifully poetic term for something. But it's also really vivid and a great, easily grasped sort of description without need for a lot of description. This idea that the first books of the Heresy are all about that sadness, that tragedy of the fall, and that it could have been so easily avoided. And this feels like a continuation of that theme, that sort of tragedy, wrapped up with the identity of the depths of the Mechanicum, the way it connects and links into the wider Imperium, its roots, and the fact that after this point, if Mars had stayed loyal, that would have meant completely different sort of landscape for the war, but it would also have meant something very different for the future of humanity.
Definitely, yeah. Absolutely. And while all that's going on, while there's this kind of melancholy around what's happening on Mars, actually, when we go to Dahlia's story, you get the grim truth that even though the grand story might be humanity, moving forwards in this golden age still, there are people being sacrificed to this machine, basically, the machine of the Mechanicum. And it's that breaks her from, her tasks of, we're doing good things, till the point where, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he dies basically for the pursuit of knowledge, and then she has to ask herself, what is the cost?
Yeah, definitely. And so, as you say that, it sort of comes to mind that the death of innocence was for mankind, but it was also for Dahlia as well, wasn't it? Because she's she goes into this. She's whisked away. It's this whole whistle stop tour, and all of a sudden she's gone from obscurity and a life of banality to something that has meaning, and that's something that she feels like is going to contribute towards the betterment of mankind. But yeah, so essentially he's an empath, isn't he? He's a psyker who's at the heart of this machine that she's built a crucial part for, and they test it, and it sort of taps into the power and the light of the Astronomicon, and this empath. The idea is that he's the channel to the warp. He's empowered by this machine, sort of focusing all the psychic power, and he should then be able to tap into all this knowledge. But it doesn't go to plan, and she realizes that actually this thing she's been doing in isolation, which to her has been a scientific exercise and something with grand ideals, actually has a human cost to it that does affect her innocence. And that prompts her to go off onto this quest for something that's sort of revealed to her by this empath, by this psyker, and this quest for knowledge, and this quest to sort of understand if what she's doing really is the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that quest is linked in with this assassin machine as well to provide a bit more drama on the way.
Yeah, totally. And I think it sort of needs that because it's a classic quest story. It's a young character going off into the world and figuring things out on her own. And it needs a threat. It needs a T-1000 sort of thing looming behind her in the rearview mirror.
And then her plucky friends who all offer her something to achieve her goals. You're right. It's straight out of like A Hero with 1,000 Faces. It's that archetypes are reasons.
Totally,
and that's fine.
That is fine, and it has a power to it because you sort of understand the structure of that.
Yeah.
If you've read The Caban Machine, which is available as a standalone story these days, when the book came out, I believe it was only available in the, I think the original version of Visions of Heresy, but certainly, or maybe a newer a version of Visions of Heresy had this story within it about the creation of this AI, which I always love in 40k. Doesn't stand for artificial intelligence, but stands for abominable intelligence, which I just think is fantastic. But I would say that having read The Caban Machine, it's a good thing, and it will help you get a little bit more out of it. But I don't think it's essential.
No,
I think there's plenty in the novel for you to grasp what this thing is, especially if you have the hardback. Or I don't know if the new ebook has it, but certainly the hardback has some cool illustrations, and there's a good one of the Caban Machine in there.
Absolutely. I think it's worth noting, just for those who aren't fully aware, artificial intelligence is banned, completely banned in the Imperium because of, I can't remember the name, the Iron Men, was it? Basically, Skynet's already happened, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
They've gone through their Terminator phase, and they're trying desperately to make sure they never have another one again. So that it fits. The name Abominable Intelligence, when linked with that story, fits so well.
It certainly does. It's the whole idea that the Dark Age of technology was created because mankind's scientific endeavours spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's Skynet, and that's why the Mechanicum are so hidebound.
Yes.
And that's sort of a clever thing of doing it, because on the one hand you've got the Caban Machine, which is a bad guy and that implacable enemy, but on the other hand you've got Dahlia and her friends and Coriel Zeth, the adept, who are actively working towards brand new technology that no one's ever seen before, that doesn't have an STC or anything like that, and they're sort of working towards the thing that the Caban Machine represents, even though they're doing it for a good reason.
Yes,
absolutely. Which I quite like that.
Yeah, they're definitely both breaking rules, but there's a fundamental difference in the reasons why. If we stick with Dahlia, so if essentially she gets to the end of this quest, because it is, once she leaves, it's a very self-contained story.
Absolutely, it's on a rails, isn't it?
Yeah, and everything that's happening in the story is happening in the background. You can see and hear it, but it doesn't affect them a huge amount. And eventually they get to the Labyrinth of Night.
Yeah, the Noctis Labyrinth.
Yeah, that's the one. And delve their way in there till they find this keeper.
Yeah, it's all very Indiana Jones then.
Yeah, it's very Indiana Jones and it's very Cthulhu as well. It's a cross between the two. And this keeper's like, oh, great, you're here. It's your turn to take over. And the dragon, the cult of the dragon, there is an essence of something there. This is where we get the story that the Emperor a long time ago defeated the dragon, brought him to Mars and entombed him forever, or supposedly forever, here, which means that the Emperor was on Mars well before he returned to Mars and went there for the quote unquote first time. Yeah. And also there's this book, the Book of the Dragon. And by the time we get to the end of the story, that book's missing. And I can't wait for the real follow-ups to this.
Well, I don't know how I feel about the whole Book of the Dragon thing, because there's a little bit at the in the afterword in the hardback where Graham talks about, he sort of suggests that there'll be hints about that in future. I always like a bit of ambiguity, and I like the fact that Mechanicum ends with that ambiguity where Dahlia is installed as the guardian of the dragon, with her protector, which is that's kind of cool. But the book has mysteriously disappeared, and I like the fact that it's left there, and you're going, oh. So the whole point of there being the guardian of the dragon and the book, and quite a lot of the story that builds up to that point, is this idea that the Mechanicum is built on worship of the Omnissiah and all that sort of stuff. And there's this legend because 200 years ago, whatever it was, the Emperor arrived and fought, and they had the pact that joined the two things together. But behind it all, underneath all that, is the clear implication that the Emperor has engineered it all. He's foreseen this. He's foreseen the need for the Mechanicum. And so it's all built to his design. And the idea is that knowledge, if it got out, would destroy the Imperium. Well, it certainly would destroy the Mechanicum. And so I love the idea that it's left with that, oh, hang on a minute. So that story, that knowledge is now out there somewhere with someone sinister.
Sure.
And we know in 40k that Mechanicum became the Adeptus Mechanicus. So clearly the revelation hasn't destroyed the world.
Well, absolutely. There's two things. So first off, bit of 40k background for those who aren't aware. There's been rumours that Mars hides a Catan shard, or whatever they're called now. And there's like a snippet in the Battlefleet Gothic Armada book where 3 Necron light cruisers, not even light cruisers, don't think, fought their way into Mars, and one of them just landed on the planet and then got blown up. So there's this big theory in 40k for a long time that the dragon, this Catan, known as the dragon, lies on Mars. And so that's an interest in and of itself into this story. The other thing is, yes, I want stories about the book. They don't necessarily have to be finding the book.
No.
There's a lot that could come out of that, even if it's 40k stories down the line. A second Schism of Mars could be a really interesting thing to do.
That would certainly be awesome for the wider narrative of 40k to have that, to sort of tie in the Dark Mechanicum a bit, because there's a lot of people calling for Dark Mechanicum models.
Yes.
A proper army, that sort of thing. If you're going to do a whole army, a narrative that ties them in really tightly with the main story, that could be very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, this implication is, and we get it when we do have a flashback scene from when the Emperor first visits Mars, and we get him fulfilling prophecies. Coming as he comes down and heals a machine, just by touching it, and then says the right words and things like that. And that was halfway through the book, 3/4 of the way through the book, and then at the end, when you get this revelation that actually the Emperor has been here before, and I think when you look at them too, you can pretty much, we deal with unreliable narrators, but you can pretty much I think you can assume that there's a lot of truth in this. from the sources and the way it's told. And you're right. So that could shake the Mechanicum to the core. For me, I'm kind of like the other twist where it almost makes the Emperor even more like deserving that he created a myth and this thing that he then came and did. So how long? Because the story of the dragon is it's essentially it's George and the Dragon, isn't it?
Exactly.
And that's a long time ago. Move that 30,000 years into the future. Like, when exactly did this happen? Right, this is a really interesting kind of thing that, as fans, we can mull over with no way of ever coming to conclusions on it. But when we talk about the Emperor's playing the long game, right, it's a long game.
Yeah, for sure, and I think you're right. I think the implication is clear that's what the book is saying. Whatever the dragon might or might not turn out to be, the implication is that the Emperor has set wheels in motion really long time ago, and he's manipulating all of this. He foresaw the need for all these different things and was able to bring them to pass. And absolutely right. That to me, I think I agree, is just another sign of the fact that the Emperor is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And this game where everyone says the Emperor made all these mistakes, you play a game for 30,000 years, you're going to make some mistakes. Or you're going to make some decisions which look like mistakes, for sure. You're going to take risks. But yeah, so that's really interesting. And that's Dali's story. And as you say, it's just a nice little adventure story, really, with her character goes through some changes and ends up at this point. And I really enjoyed that. And then on the other side of it, you've got, as you say, you've got the Emissary Regulus, emissary coming in and offering this power, and we quickly see Legio Mortis and Kerbal Howe are snatching at it. Free of the shackles of the Imperium.
I think what's interesting is that I've been reading some other reviews of the book just to see what other people think, and some of the criticisms of it seem to be that this doesn't go into enough detail for some people of the actual specifics of what happened in the Civil War,
right?
Which is a fair criticism, because if that's what you're after, this book does not provide it.
Yeah,
this book is about the point at which it happens. So you get to see essentially the only bit of the actual Civil War you really get to see is the assault led by Legio Mortis and a bad guy whose name I've forgotten, on the stronghold of Adept Zeth. So it's this magma city. It's super cool. It's a city built on a lake of an ocean of lava, which it uses to power its technology. That's really cool. And because of Zeth's noosphere, when all the Dark Mechanicum scrap code and stuff comes out into the sort of the data world of Mars, and it knackers most of the planet, but the few places which have been upgraded with her tech survived. So she forms a sort of bulwark against the Dark Mechanicum. And so the war part of it is very much Mortis and a bunch of horrible proto-demon engines and all that sort of stuff coming boiling in and trying to destroy the magma city. And you get that. And you get a sort of a slow build around the Titanicus. There's a little bit of politicking, which is kind of cool. And then when they walk, there's if you like Titans, there's plenty to enjoy of seeing Tempestus, who are a bit knackered, a bit sort of beaten up from their wars as part of the Great Crusade, trying to defend the magma city against the overwhelming odds of Mortis, who just happened to have an Imperator Titan, which is cool.
Yes.
But that's the point. That provides the power and the action and that sort of stuff while Dahlia's going off on her jaunt. But this isn't about loads of Dark Mechanicum versus not Dark Mechanicum Skitarii. It's not about massive battles across the surface of Mars. It doesn't go into all of that detail. Now, maybe we'll see more of that in future. I'd be slightly surprised if we get that in Black Library. I think we might see more of that in a Forge World book.
Yeah, when you look now, we're 60 books into the Heresy. How many have been full-on action books just of fights. They're okay for what they are, but that's what Space Marine Battles is for.
I'm completely with you.
Yeah, and some people do want to read them, but that's not what the Heresy is about. The Heresy is about characters. It's about that kind of thing. And I think what Graham gives us is enough here that you as you say, you see two Legios walk. You see the tension that's created when Legios face off, which the fear of what can happen there, and then the attack on, as you say, the city is epic in its proportions. We've got Ordinatus engines on, like, rolling out of walls to fire at Titans and things like that. But I can only take so much of this gun fired, these shields crackled.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it becomes dull fairly quick.
Yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that if that is what you want, you don't get that much of it in this. But like you said, that you don't get so much of that anyway in the Heresy. I think what it also doesn't have is a huge amount of the will they, won't they, and the detail behind exactly like what's driven Kelbor Hal to the point of being prepared to accept.
Yeah.
So to the War Master, but the point is that we've had that with the Legions. So we've had the first 3-book trilogy is all about that in detail. I suspect, I'm speaking purely from opinion here, but I suspect it was a conscious decision to say, look, we could revisit that, but the same story just with Mechanicum guys. But what's the point? We've already told that story. It's in there, but it's not in huge amounts of detail.
Yeah, I don't think there's a great need to. I think
I
think the character of Kelbor Hal is written in a way that you can read all that background whilst reading the book. You quickly understand that this is a guy who feels shackled, who wants to go beyond that. And I've said it before on here. I listened to a guy on YouTube, and his name's gone, Matt. Can't remember his name now. It's gone from my head. But he always said that you don't need to explain everything, and his point of view was like, you don't know anything about Darth Vader when you see him, but he is, he's the bad guy. You don't know anything about Boba Fett when you first meet him, but Darth Vader turns around to him and says, and no disintegrations.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that tells you all you need to know about Boba Fett and his relationship with one of the most powerful beings in the universe. So, and if you can do that well, then actually the writing of a book is vastly improved by it. It's one of those things that I didn't notice until Matt Colville. That's the one. It's one of those things as a non-writer, as someone who doesn't think that way. When he said it, it made sense, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah. But yeah, really cool. I think we've covered most of the book, to be honest.
I think it's worth pointing out that we mentioned knights at the start. There's some extremely cool stuff with the knights. There's a character who you see he's the point that moves between the big picture of everything that's going on with like the night houses and the Titan legions, and then moves into Dahlia's story.
Yeah,
because he sort of ends up trying to track down the Kaban machine. That's kind of cool. So there's lots to enjoy from that. I was really surprised reading this back how much I could take the picture I now have of Imperial Knights and apply it to what Graham wrote with really no problem. There's no description that contradicts how Knights look and work these days. I really enjoyed that. I appreciated it.
Yeah, absolutely. The Skitarii are plentiful to the point where there are various different types, but the knights work well, and that character as well. He maintains that kind of emperor fearing kind of aspect, that almost worship as well, and brings that into the book, which is needed there as well. And there are plenty of cool little knight running battles that we see, and you actually get quite an understanding, I think, of how the Titans work together.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff with the Titans if you like that sort of thing. I love the idea that, I mean, if you ever read things like Titanicus and the earlier Black Library depictions of Titan legions, the princeps are often in their like sensory isolation tanks and that sort of stuff. And in this, the princeps senioris of Tempestus actually ends up in one of these amniotic tanks. And sort of, I'm sure there's a line where it says something along the lines of, this is essentially the future. Everyone's going to want to do this.
Yeah.
And it's a nice little touch of showing that they have changed in 10,000 years. Some things have remained remarkably similar, but other things have actually adapted. And perceptions and ideas have changed, even within the Titan legions. And I quite like that.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, I think we're probably done there.
Yeah, I guess it's just worth pointing out that if you really enjoy Mechanicum, there hasn't been another novel set on Mars, but there's Cybernetica the novella, which personally I would say is half a really good novella. The first half is fantastic.
Yeah.
Tails off a little bit in the second half. There's the odd other little bit. There's some Imperial Fists in here. If you like Imperial Fists, check those out. But like I think you said earlier, we'll maybe see some more of Mars in the not too distant future. And I think there's some interesting arcs to pick up. But I think this is one of those must reads, so that will all make sense later on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful.
Cool.
Well, thank you for coming on, Michael.
Pleasure as always.
And we'll get you on again soon to chat more. We've got Black Library Live coming up as well, so there might be some information on there. Exciting times.
It certainly is. I look forward to it.
Cool. Cheers, man.
Thanks.
Well, it's been a little while since we last recorded, so there has been some stuff going on in the world of the Heresy. We've got Alpharius fully released.
Hooray!
What a beautiful model.
Fantastic model, and a really good paint job on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to reiterate, this is the guy, Rob McFarlane, who did the Space Wolves. But yeah, it is gorgeous. Absolutely lovely model. And he's got some Terminators with him, hasn't he? Some Lernians, which also look very good as well. Really do like them.
Yeah, they look lovely.
It's been fairly lean. We've had some Mechanicum bundles, and that's been about it. And some more last chances to buy. We should probably talk about that. So we've expressed our frustration with that. I think there's been a lot of chat online. There's been on certain channels, in Facebook groups and things like that. It's been clarified. This is not a Forge World decision per se. They have a stock department, sales stock department that have basically said there's stuff sitting around, it doesn't sell, we need to make space. We know that GW is still sorting out their second building. They're still very tight for space in that main building. So basically we're told, these are coming off. Now that doesn't mean they're coming off forever. Essentially they can do a number of things. They can bring them back out in resin. They can potentially move. There is some chat that there's going to be more plastic production. Forge World already used plastic production for Necromunda for the main kits. Personally, I think that Heresy will not go that way. Well, not yet, anyway. We could see them re-released to go along with specific books. When Malevolence comes out, White Scars, Mark II armour goes fairly well. You never know, they might fire up a load and do a limited period of Mark II armour.
I'm sort of hoping that's what they do. Yeah, that's one of my hopes.
Or print on demand. So they choose a month, every month or every 2 months they have something that they're like, okay guys, get your orders in, these will be printed at the end of the month, end of the period, and then we'll choose something else. Which is
that could be good also. I mean, I find it frustrating that they couldn't have done something where they said, okay, that we're going to take these off stock, but like you said, like once once a month you can place orders, and then once we'll get them to you in 6 months or 3 months or whatever it would be, and then they build up a load of orders and get things done. But it's just
I think people
frustrating.
And I think if you did that, there would be frustration with wait times as well. Again, I don't think there's a great answer to that. At the end of the day, these kits weren't being purchased anywhere near enough. Some of the kits, like the guns, have other options, all that jazz. They're aware of the community's feel. Our main point on the show was communication, and they've taken some steps to address that. They had the stream on whenever it was, a couple of Thursdays ago, and Andy Hoare and Tony Cottrell on there with Martin Morin to answer some questions and discuss a few things. I know Andy had a kind of a part in suggesting that as well from within, which is always handy. We'll talk a little bit about the stream. One of the most important things for me personally was they made a commitment to stream Heresy content. Now, the way they work the stream at the moment, they have 3 days essentially where they stream. Warhammer Wednesdays, Thursdays they do other stuff, Fridays they do 40k. Now, there's a lot of other stuff. So just within Forge World, you've got Heresy, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, Middle Earth, and then general kind of Forge World stuff going on. If they're releasing, we also got Underworlds, Warhammer Underworlds, to go in there as well. If they're releasing a game, that's when they take over the Thursday. So I fully expect the week before the release of Adeptus Titanicus, that Thursday will be all Adeptus Titanicus, and that makes sense. So there's more stuff there than they can fit in a regular monthly schedule. So they're making a commitment to try and get something out every 2 months. Now, that won't be every 8 weeks, so every 8 and a bit weeks. That will be as and when schedule dictates. So I hear that the next one will be much sooner than 2 months. Sorry, but we're never going to get prime time stuff, and that's fine. What we want, I think, what I certainly want, and I've called for, and people have echoed thoughts, is regular content and hopefully Warhammer community as well. And that, even if it doesn't do a lot, it allows... So there's two things here. There is the Heresy community who want to talk to Forge World and be talked to, talked at by Forge World. And then there's others. And people who look at the Heresy from the outside see a very different thing to what we see on the inside. They're not on the forums. They're not on the Facebook groups. Anuj and Andy pop up every now and then and answer questions on these groups. I've seen a few others do that as well. And that's really handy. It's really useful, and it helps us as a community just sometimes take the edge off some of those things that are boiling up. If my friends who play Age of Sigmar don't see any of that, so all they see potentially are the people who then moan about it on social media or what have you, or express their dissatisfaction. It's not even moaning sometimes, but what they then see, or they see that Forge World have put up Last Chance to Buy.
Yes, that's always the big scary bit, because they might see that before anything else.
So their perception. So when I was talking to Ben about Blood and Glory, he was like, "How many tickets can you sell?" I said, "Well, we sold 92 for London." He's like, "Oh, I didn't think Heresy was doing that well," and that's because he hears snippets about people, saying stuff, and then sees this stuff going on Last Chance, and hasn't seen any Heresy on any format that he's come across. So the pure fact that we're going to get maybe some Warhammer articles, community articles, definitely some TV time, means that Heresy will be seen to be supported. And actually, you and I know that it was always supported, but the pure fact it's seen to be supported is an extra level.
Yeah, and that's the difference.
It is the difference. Perception is everything.
Yeah, because you can know something, but whether or not it's communicated right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the key.
So that is probably the fundamental thing. Was the stream perfect? No. It was interesting. I'm a semi-regular Warhammer TV watcher. There are a large group of fans who are on that chat room all the time, and they understand how the system works. We know, you and I know, Neil, that you're not going to get any information about a release that's more than 3 months away. It just generally doesn't happen from GW.
And that's the policy. And that's
the
what
policy.
they're sticking to.
Every now and then you will. Right? Don't get me wrong. Right? There are always exceptions to these general rules, but that's a general rule. So when you see people coming straight on going, sanguineous when, which annoys me as a concept of how you ask a question on any platform, frankly. I think it's pretty rude. But they're not going to answer you. All right? They'll tell you when a Sanguinius is coming out, when they're ready to tell you Sanguinius is coming out. When are we going to get Malevolence? Well, they're not going to give you a date. There are fundamental problems with giving you a date. If they give you it, so Fires of Syraxis, yeah? Or even just the last Black Book. They give you a date of November, say for that last Black Book. It got pushed back to February, weekender. All that time, well, where's the book? Why is it not here? Where's the book? Why is it not here? It's really annoying. I was planning all my purchases for around this book, and you get that level of dissatisfaction. On the other hand, when you don't put a solid date down, you get, when's the book coming? We don't know when the book's coming. You can make rough estimates. Again, there's no correct way of doing that. There are two systems with benefits and negatives. And Forge World used to occasionally let you know when stuff was coming. Adeptus Titanicus is a great example. People are getting really annoyed that it's not here already. But actually, do you want to know it's coming for 2 years? Do you want to know it's coming in 3 months and keep that hype going? I don't know. There's not a right answer. Everyone will have a different opinion on that. But
I personally, also, the other problem you've got is there can be a date for it. It can all be done. It can be ready. But there's lots of examples of stuff just being pushed back through the release schedule because they're not quite ready to release it yet.
Yeah, I mean,
you can look at something and say, "Oh right, okay, it's in development, and by this date they'll have all the artwork done, and all the models will be made, all the models will be painted." That does not mean it's going to be the next release that comes out.
No.
So in some ways, that's why it's even harder to give a date because they could look at it and go, "Oh yeah, well this will be ready in 6 months' time."
Yeah.
But that does not mean it's going to be released in 6 months' time. So for them to put a date on it, it is just complete. Well,
it's hard.
It's not even down to them. So
no, it's not.
They could say it's ready, but they can't tell you a date because they're not the ones that make the decision. So.
And it's not just that. So Adeptus Titanicus box set, plastic models in that. Fine, cool. GW can do that in house. I suspect the books. The books might be all in house. That might be all UK.
From what I heard, yes,
some of
it is, yeah.
Oh, it is all UK. Okay, so that makes things different. And that, fair play to GW, they've got the power to do that. Let's take the Black Book as an example then. So, Malevolence. Say they have literally sent it off to the printers. Well, that printer's in China. And if that one ISO container with their books on gets stuck in customs somewhere, that's nothing under their control. And if they've told you it's going to be ready on 30th of January and then it's delayed for 2 weeks, then they have to slip. People get annoyed with that. So yeah, there's lots of reasons. But to see people in chat asking these questions, and there were regulars in chat were quite patient. Actually, to be fair, were like they're not going to answer that question, and then that question just got repeated and repeated and repeated. Like, there are ways to repeat questions, just constantly every 6 lines writing
it's copy and paste, isn't it?
Yeah,
what we do.
it is. It's. I can't stand it, and it doesn't really work. If you have a genuine question and it isn't getting answered, then you can repeatedly ask it to a point. But a lot of the time, there's actually a reason they're not answering it. And then they get stuck in. There's been some interesting kind of reviews, people who haven't seen the stream particularly, who didn't particularly like the way it was handled, some of the answers. Now, we know Tony can be Tony. Even
That's putting it very nicely.
Even for an English crowd, I don't think many people get his sense of humour. I think some of his jokes are pretty appalling as well. And not like nasty, just bad. Just not that funny. But
I think, isn't it at the Weekender, we always say, oh, new Weekender, same jokes?
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're across the pond, say, then there's maybe even more of a disconnect to his style of chat. But I genuinely don't think he means any offence or any malice in anything he says. Now, I've had instances of one particular instance at Games Day years ago. Someone at Forge World had just sculpted something and they decided to make it because he'd done it in his lunchtime and it was cool. So I was like, and I asked the question. I said, so if someone started sculpting a Skaven team, say for Blood Bowl, would they ever? And his response was to turn around. It's a classic Tony answer, actually, is to turn around and say, oh, what do you want? New Dreadnoughts or a new Skaven team? Well, most people in the Forge World seminar are going to be there for 40k. So they're going to say Dreadnoughts, aren't they? Last laughs on him, really, because they made a Skaven team. But that's the way he asked. And in many ways, for the majority of the crowd, that's something that gets them going. So I understand why he does it. I was like, not really what I asked. I'm not asking you. And that's fine. But that's the way Tony sometimes answers questions. And we've got used to that. Some people hadn't, and they were like, this bloke's rude. And I'm like, well, I don't think he's rude. But when you ask a question that is either about, it's about rules or changing rules in the next book, if they ignore the question, then they get blamed for not answering anything and ignoring the chat, and what's the point in having the chat? If they answer the question and just say, we're not going to answer that, then that people kind of like, well, why bother answering the question? And then so he makes light of some of the questions, and then you offer up this issue.
Thinking about it, that's always been his style in the events that I've been to.
Absolutely.
Always, if someone's asked like a not a tricky question, but something where they've actually, they've got like concern and they want, he will always make a joke of the question to not answer the question.
And that's an important point, right? He makes a joke of the question, and it's not a joke at the expense of the question. It's a jokey response to the question. I think some people can read that as a joke against that person asking the question, and I understand that, actually. I'm not going to say that I don't see that, because I can completely understand how easy that would be to do. But Tony, from everything I know of Tony, I don't know him particularly well, but everything I've seen and all the people waiting, that's not him. So, give him the credit. But so there is that issue potentially with the stream, but I tell you what, the more it's on, the more people will get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so the more Tony's on
screen,
and
it doesn't have to be Tony the whole time as well, because
absolutely,
there's loads of designers, loads of artists. They could cover Heresy in a lot of different ways on that stream.
Absolutely, but so I was just wanting to point out some of the kind of issues that other people have pointed out, and I'm not dismissing any of those issues, but there is a background, and I must admit I spent a fair bit of time after the stream on various Facebook groups kind of putting my point across, trying to be as patient as possible, because and I had various people ask me, one of them just said, why are you bothering? Why are you dealing with these people? And I'm like, because our community is not big enough that we can't deal with these people.
That's very true.
Someone comes on, again, it's perception. Someone comes on spouting that, in their opinion, and I believe some of it was maybe just, heated reaction as well, that, I felt that they were being rude and making fun of us, and this has happened, and actually they didn't tell us anything, and all this jazz. And I'm like, okay, right, well, let's just break that down a little bit, right? This is the reason why they didn't tell us any releases because they're not allowed to. This is the reason that they didn't do this because they're not allowed to. This is the reason they act like this because they found that works best for them. That kind of thing. Once you do that and give reasons, then you get to the point, and a lot of it comes down to is I can't get a game of Heresy in my local area. And that's a fundamental different issue. But hopefully what's going on in the Heresy at the moment will help improve that as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's the perception. We've got to get perception out to other people outside of the Heresy that Heresy's fine, Heresy is a good game, it's thriving.
Everyone outside of our community, when I told them we had 92 sign-ups for London, they were like, wow, that's doing really well. I'm like, yes, it is. You're not going to get that every week, but the events are selling, 30-man events are selling out quick. It's good.
Well, I didn't realise that that when I said that went to that Spartanax one, there was another Heresy event on that weekend.
Yeah.
So that's two events
running.
I think not next door to each other, but two events. With you would have thought that they would have been like, wow, they're eating out of each other's sort of
absolutely.
pool of players. So two events running simultaneously.
I think the 30 tickets for Blood and Glory went in the first few hours, nice and easily without much promotion of it, so we're doing all right. But yes, so those are my kind of things. Hopefully that came across the way I wanted it to come across. The more we see, and as you say, like Andy's great on there. Andy's the head of specialist at the moment, but he loves Heresy, so he took that time to come on and specifically to answer some of those questions as well. And to prove that Forge World are continuing, there's no plans to mothball it or anything. So that's good. And as you say, moving forwards, rules writers, artists, loads of different stuff we can painters, loads of different stuff we can get on.
I'd like to go on there and do a painting segment for Heresy. That would be great. I could definitely talk for a couple of hours about painting Heresy.
Could. They probably won't have the cameras on, but it's fine.
Yeah, they'd probably turn it off after 5 minutes.
So I'm going to borrow from Pendrag again. He wrote up a little bit on the 30k forum with the major details in it because I was actually out at the time. We're looking at Age of Darkness now. Again, a lot of this information was actually well known, and I don't know if there's a willful ignorance in some aspects of the Heresy, or they genuinely just are like really particular with where they get their information from, because things like we're not moving to 8th edition in the foreseeable future, right? I mean, we've known that for a while, and I
saw some people going, but that's been common knowledge, I thought.
Yeah, it is common knowledge, but again, maybe that shows where Forge World's communication has broken down.
Or maybe people just didn't believe, are in disbelief until they hear it the next time. They go, oh, right, so okay, it's still not going to 8. Okay, sort of thing.
Yeah. Turns out that the FAQ is being worked on and might be closer than we thought. Anuj, while he was playing the game, actually said something about he managed to find some free time to work on the FAQ. But that doesn't mean we can expect it immediately. Everyone just chill out. But it's being worked on, and that's a good thing, because there's a lot of questions that need clearing up. The Fires of Syraxis is so. I didn't realise this was basically a pastime hobby thing for Andy, which then turned into a book as a result of him getting very busy, and then essentially 40k changed edition, which meant that not only did all the rules for Fires of Syraxis not really work, and Fires of Syraxis, the main thing for us was using Mechanicum units in 40k. Not only did the rules not work, but actually a lot of the lore was then out of date as well. So it wasn't just like, oh, we can rewrite the rules. It was like, oh, actually we'd need to do a lot of different things. So that's got no time limit on it now. That's like, hopefully one day. And fingers crossed.
That really sort of screwed it then, didn't it?
Yeah, I think had it just been rules, they could have worked on that. But the maelstrom turned up across the middle of the flipping galaxy, and all of a sudden everything's gone to pot. But there we go. There's we got the questions about Xenos races in Heresy. There's no real intention to do that yet. No confirmation of the Armiger or the new knights, the big knights, the list. But that's no confirmation. That doesn't mean that it is or isn't. That's question avoidance, which is fair enough. They did show off the Blood Angel Praetor in Tartarus. Did you see that?
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, I thought that was quite cool. It looks really cool. It's good to see that there's new stuff coming out as well as old stuff going. But there's, it looks obviously like a 3D sort of sculpt. So that's cool in a way. I could see us possibly getting more and more of this sort of style, possibly.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Some will, some won't. But they're going to do Legion-specific Praetors, which is seriously cool.
Yes, yeah, I think that's. I mean, that's what I'm hoping that. Obviously, the next book gets ready. You get, say, Blood Angels. Okay, here's your Blood Angels Praetor, your White Scars Praetor. And they do that, and then if down the line they can fit in some other ones, it'd be great. It'd be great to see.
Absolutely.
Models.
Tony got his Ordinatus mole out.
Yes.
Which is huge, and the end twizzles. So, that looks fantastic. It's going to be interesting to see how that works in game, to see how many people actually want to use it, because it's going to have some weird, crazy rules. But that's a Mechanicum only thing, so that's pretty cool. They hinted a lot of things. There was a lot of ifs and maybes, and those things can change as and when. We all know that when they come to do these things, they start with a lot of ideas, and a lot of the time they have to trim them down.
I mean, let's face it. If you've ever been to a Heresy weekend or sat into a Forge World seminar, the way Tony runs those seminars, it very much is a lot of hints and maybe, we might do that sort of thing, and you never quite know which way it's going. Do you remember when he spoke, had a stand-up count of who would buy a Warlord Titan?
Yeah.
And then literally, about 2 or 3 months later, it was like, ta-da, Warlord Titan.
Yeah,
so, you never quite know which way the man's going.
No, yeah, that is very true. You're absolutely right. And there's some, just to cover a couple of the hints, like Demon Primarch models as well as alternative Loyalist poses for Primarchs. Once they've done the Primarchs in the character series, right, I mean, they'd be foolish not to revisit them because of the money that would generate. Even with Demonic Magnus out, I think a Forge World Magnus at Terra would be well worth purchasing.
So, yeah, definitely. I think, and there's loads that I think really could do with that scope. Horus at Terra. Those sort of
full grim.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's loads. There's absolutely loads that could do with a rework and a new version of, and people go again. It reignites those armies as well, which is what probably we need to do and we need to look to do.
Sure. In terms of Malevolence itself, Andy Hall's actually written or helped to write some of the White Scars section. He's a big White Scars fan, and he assisted. He's been in some of that, which is cool. Andy's, he's got good form, shall we say, for writing Heresy stuff, being involved with the first few books, I think. Trying to remember. Probably got that wrong.
Yes, I'm sure he was.
I can't remember how many it was. I'm sure Andy will tell me exactly how many it was and how wrong I was in saying a few. The Chondax and Cygnus campaign systems, they fill out those two environments. Cygnus is a big, big place, and there's a lot that the Black books that cover around that the novel doesn't. And they're going to build on the Book 4 campaign rules, which are pretty cool. There's a lot of scope in there, which is good. And the Scars and Blood Angels will be kind of built upon their Book 6 rules, but tweaked a little bit to work better, which is good that they're cracking on with that. In terms of future black books, they've told us this before. Like, there's no intention to stop. They want to continue producing this stuff, and it sells well. Why wouldn't they? They have been,
and we haven't had a black book in a while. So when it does, I think when we do see that drop, it's going to have a big effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're looking at, so they did mention a couple of names. They mentioned Talon as being something that's been discussed again, right? So that's such a vague term, right? Let's not read anything into that. But potentially having the surface war and the underground war covered. So
cool.
There's two kind of almost separate things, which is pretty cool. And then they also talked about the Martian Civil War as a possible black book. But that's been I can't see how they wouldn't ever do that. Like, that's something they mentioned years ago, and it just makes perfect sense. They could. Mark Bedford must be like, I could draw so many crazy Dark Mechanicum things.
Mark Bedford's probably got several sketchbooks full of stuff. He's waiting for the meeting, and he's just going to get them all out and go, right, okay, I've thought about this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it sounds good. It sounds like they're working hard. The writing team's on it, and there's plenty to be looking forward to. We got I think we got almost 900 viewers over the course of the interview, which is good. I think some of them.
What's the average usually on those?
I don't really know. I wouldn't be surprised if 700 odd was a reasonable figure. I don't really look at the viewer count unless it's something specific where I'm interested to see how many people are on. I know. Trying to remember now, some of their live streaming games from events, I've seen them go over 1,000, but that's been for specific events. And at the weekend as well, which is an easier time than 4 o'clock or 4:30, whatever it is, 5 o'clock on a Thursday evening. So,
yeah, I mean, I must admit, I logged on near the end of the interview and left it running mainly because I wanted to try and catch a bit of it.
Yeah.
But also, I almost wanted to show support and
Yes,
so
absolutely.
show that there are people out here that want to watch this. And
there were definitely people on there whose primary goal was to show that they want this content, and that's fine. That's the way you encourage them to do more. So that's good. That content's still got to be good, and you can still be critical of what they've done. And if you think that there were issues in how they covered stuff or what they didn't do, then write on Warhammer TV's Facebook page that I watched the Heresy thing and I feel that we need more of this and less of this and what have you. Do it in an adult, sensible way, actually critical response, then that will be taken on board. They're interesting in the way sometimes they deal with criticism, GW, but if you do it, if you handle it right, then it's taken on board. So, yeah, and as I say, the big thing is moving forwards, we're hopefully going to get more. And
that's what we want. That's what we're angling for.
I was actually at the gaming club. I haven't actually watched the game back yet, but they seem to be having fun. They, I think Anuj was forced into charging Alfarius into Guilliman, or at least letting them get into a combat. Which that's cool. That's fine. They need to see that thing, and we'll be getting to the point soon where we're getting more and more. They're going to build up the amount of detail that they use in those games.
I think it's only a good thing. I think if they can get some more games on, get some more people talking about Heresy, I think people will see it and know that it's still around. And ultimately, the more people that see it, the more people that maybe then want to play it. Because the books have always been such a great way of getting people into playing Heresy.
Yeah.
The stories and everything that goes behind it. But I feel as though, we haven't had anyone really sort of talking about it. So we need to get some people out there talking about it on Warhammer TV.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem with podcasts like this is it's for Heresy fans.
Yes.
Why would you come and listen to it if you weren't a Heresy fan, now actually there are some people who don't play the game who come listen. We've got Michael on talking about books, things like that. That helps. And I know that sometimes people get kind of fans of like or follow people who put content out, almost whatever their content is, kind of thing. They like the way they speak or what have you. So you get that's a small percentage. And the same for 30k channel. You're not going to go subscribe to a 30k channel unless you're interested in Heresy. And it's so easy now if you're on YouTube and say Winter's SEO, he does some Heresy stuff, he does a lot of 40k stuff. But there's so much content out there that, again, unless you're really into the character you follow, you're not going to watch a game you don't. So you skip. You go and watch something else.
Yeah.
But there are people out there doing it, and that's good. And hopefully, as I say, GW will push on. And I certainly have. I don't have any special contacts or anything like that. I know a couple of people.
You have a secret phone that goes straight to Forge World Studio.
If only, yeah. Totally.
Special
really
red one in Studio Truth.
Absolutely.
The Rudgy Batline.
Rudgy wouldn't answer. But I know some of the people up there, and I've given my critique in that form, rather than there's not much point with me then writing it on the Facebook wall. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, Well, that was a pretty abrupt end to that segment. Unfortunately, we had a power issue in the house. The cursing of our recording carries on, but we pretty much finished up that section anyway, so we thought we might as well move on. As a result of us recording late, not being able to get back together, I'm going to finish off the show just by myself, so apologies for that. I do have as a result, we did have a competition planned. There is a rather cool prize to be giving away, particularly for old school fans of the Heresy aesthetic. So we'll do that next show, and hopefully everyone can join in with that. That would be cool. I do have an event, unfortunately, because of the nature of our last show not coming out. This is very late in the day. The Siege of Volturus is going on in Derby, in the Boards and Swords Hobbies shop. That's happening the week of release, so was it 16th, 17th June, I believe. The guys seem pretty cool up there. It seems like, from what I've heard as well, that the shop's pretty decent, and that should be cool to attend. Maybe I'll try and look at getting up there at some point in the future for an event. Alongside that, Blood and Glory tickets are, well, pretty much, there's only a handful left, literally a handful left at time of recording. So if you are considering coming to Blood and Glory, then you need to get on there quick. It might even be too late. That's happening 2nd, 3rd and 4th of November in Derby in the Roundhouse. What hasn't sold out yet, because the tickets haven't gone up, are the Centurion event. So on the Friday night, we're in talks with, or almost kind of guaranteed that the guys from Edge of Empire will be running a Centurion event on the Friday night from 7 o'clock. Little 1,000-point games, I think we've decided on. All the details still yet to be confirmed. But that will be going on. So if you're coming to the main event, you can play in that as well. If you're not even playing in the main event, you can come and play the Centurion event if you've got that Friday evening free and you live close enough to do so. During the Friday as well, we're hoping to put on Adeptus Titanicus. So that's something, again, that's yet to be fully confirmed. Obviously, with the release date only being August, there's only so much information that we can gather and put towards writing, how we're going to do things. But we're hoping that we're going to get some players for that. Everyone can get their toys in August, paint them all up, and come along in November and play that. If you do play other game systems, I think Age of Sigmar, the main event's sold out, but there's Warhammer Achievements, and then there's 40k as well, plus Shadespire, there's Blood Bowl, but there's various other things going on. So you can I'll put the link in the show notes, but you can head to Blood and Glory. It's going to be a really good event. And the guys as well, you can check out the Twitter accounts of Blood and Glory and the Facebook pages. They've been posting up the terrain they're making for the event, and there's a list of prices as well. I might have mentioned that earlier in the show. So food and drink, the prices are already up, so you know what you're getting involved in if you go up there. So all that's wonderful stuff. As usual, if you want to contact us, greg@theimperialtruth.com or neil@theimperialtruth.com. Check out the Facebook page, search for The Imperial Truth on there, and Instagram as well. And we'll be pushing on for next show, hopefully getting everything sorted, fingers crossed, getting computers fixed and all those issues that come with recording a podcast. That's life. We get on with it as much as we can, as much as these things allow us to. But I won't labour the point any further. We'll see you next time, as I say, when hopefully things are working well. But for now, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.